Two very different stories are emerging tonight out of the attack in Mexico that left a Michigan man beaten and two Portland State University basketball stars in jail. Tonight we hear from the accused and from the victim with tonight's top story. On Your Side investigator Anna Song joins us with the latest developments. And Anna, this story seems to be taking a different turn every day.
It does, Angelica. The PSU Senator Scott Morrison is back home in Canada now, saying his family was offered a deal by the victim's dad to settle all of this privately for $150,000. Problem is, he says he was nowhere near the attack when it happened, so his family did not take up the victim's dad on that offer.
Scott Morrison says it's been the strangest couple of weeks in his life. He went from making history with Portland State in their first NCAA tournament appearance to being arrested and thrown in a Mexican jail with his teammate, Jeremiah Dominguez.
So at this point, we were just confused, and we just figured they wanted, $20, because, you hear that about in Mexico, just pay them $10, $20 and you can get out of there.
He says they were in jail for a full 16 hours before learning why they were held, but claims he was nowhere near the Squid Row area when Kyle Maher of Michigan was attacked and had witnesses to prove it. Morrison says he was never even given a chance to make a statement to police.
Every time a Mexican gentleman that was in there asked on behalf of us why the two Americans, or they thought I was American at the time, were in the jail cell, they threatened the Mexican guy and said they'd beat him up if he talks on behalf of us again.
I don't know, it was definitely an experience of my lifetime.
From his hometown in Lansing, Michigan, Kyle Maher shows the extent of his injuries, saying his experience was frightening too. Initially, he says all he knew was that it had been a tall guy and a short guy who attacked him.
So I had grabbed my mouth and there was blood all over.
He later identified Morrison as his attacker when he was shown a photo of the basketball player. And as for reports that his family offered Morrison's father a deal to drop the charges for $150,000, they claim it's nonsense.
We just want them to, say, what they did and why they did it and what makes them think that it's okay to do that to another American citizen and leave them in the streets of Mexico. That is troublesome to me.
Okay, so here's another contradiction in all of this. Kyle Maher insists he pressed charges against Morrison and Dominguez before he left Mexico. Scott Morrison is saying he was never charged and had the district attorney in Mexico there apologizing to him for all of this before he left. And, of course, we are left wondering what PSU has to say about all of this, Carl, since they announced yesterday both students are suspended over this matter.
They've been called role models, praised as star athletes, but tonight two Portland State basketball players are sitting in a Mexican jail after a man was brutally beaten. We have live team coverage. Sports director Katie Brown has reaction from PSU, but we begin with K2's Derek Skiba, who spoke with the father of one of the players tonight.
And he says his son will not face charges and should be getting out of jail and onto a plane soon. Daniel Dominguez expects his son Jeremiah back here in Oregon tomorrow, but it sounds like the other player still faces charges in Mexico after a serious fight.
Kevin Stewart has known Jeremiah Dominguez for years as a friend and neighbor in South Salem.
He was a good basketball player and he worked hard at it. That's what he wanted to do.
Stewart watched Dominguez grow up and saw him mature as a basketball player and a man. That's why the recent arrest makes no sense.
It's not fair. It couldn't happen to a nicer kid,
Dominguez and Scott Morrison are two stars of the Portland State basketball team. For the first time, the Vikings finally made it to the NCAA championships this year. This is Morrison.
We got the targets on our back and teams are coming for us.
Dominguez just won Player of the Year.
And everybody's coming together. The guys are knowing what they need to do.
Now the American consulate in Tijuana says Morrison and Dominguez were both arrested while on spring break in Cabo. This man, Kyle Meager, was badly beaten. The U.S. consulate in Tijuana says Morrison beat up the 23-year-old man from Michigan, damaging his jaw. The consulate says Dominguez ran from police and resisted arrest, and that's what got him in trouble.
Our prayers are going to be with him, hopefully, and hopefully everything will turn out okay.
Tonight, Dominguez's father, Daniel, tells K2, "All I know is that there's a lot of supportive people getting back my son."
Jeremiah's dad is a corrections officer and understands why police attacked his son if he did try to run. He has not spoken with his son since the attack. Reporting live in the newsroom, Derek Skiba, K2 News.
Portland State officials aren't talking tonight, but the university was quick to issue a statement once this story broke today. K2 Sports Director Katie Brown continues our team coverage with how the university is responding. Katie?
Well, for a school working hard to raise the profile of its athletics department, this is a huge blow, especially since it comes less than 2 weeks after PSU reveled in its most proud moment, its first ever trip to the NCAA tournament. Morrison and Dominguez weren't just role players on that team, they were the stars. Dominguez was the Big Sky Player of the Year, and Morrison won the conference's highest defensive honor. PSU Athletic Director Tori Chisholm issued this statement today. We are surprised and disappointed in the actions and poor judgment our student athletes have shown in this situation. Prior to this, they conducted themselves in a positive manner within our program. I am disheartened to see them put themselves in such a bad position. Now, Scott Morrison was a senior, so his college eligibility is done, but Jeremiah Dominguez was a junior. He does have 1 year left to play college basketball. Angelica?
Katie, thank you. Stay with K2 News for continuing coverage of the 2 PSU players arrested in Mexico. In between newscasts, you can log on to KATU.com.
2 Portland State basketball players arrested in Mexico over the weekend won't face charges. They were arrested in Cabo San Lucas for a fight involving a 23-year-old. K2's Jeff Yeager is live at PSU with these latest developments. Jeff?
Well, Natalie, I just got off the phone with the U.S. Consulate, and they tell me that neither Scott Morrison nor Jeremiah Dominguez will face any criminal charges in connection to that fight.
You can't cause that much damage with one hand. We didn't think it was hit with fist.
The surgeon who repaired 23-year-old Kyle Mayer's jaw says he's never seen an injury like it.
And his lower jaw was broken into several pieces.
Mayer's jaw was shattered, and it was unlikely it was by a fist. That's according to his doctors down in Cabo San Lucas. Now, police arrested Portland State Basketball Center Scott Morrison and guard Jeremiah Dominguez in connection to the fight Friday night. The American Consulate tells us that Morrison was responsible for the fight, and Dominguez fled from the scene and resisted arrest. The Consulate also tells us that charges have been dropped against both men, that Morrison left the country last night, and Dominguez's father told us that Jeremiah was on his way home from Mexico this morning. As for Mayer, he too is on his way home, and Dr. Rojas says it'll be a long 6-month recovery. Now, Dr. Rojas did tell me that Mayer had to have 2 titanium plates put into his jawbone with 8 screws to repair just how many fractured pieces of bone were floating around in his cheek there. He also did say he'll be on a liquefied diet for about 3 months, Natalie.
Terrible injuries for him, Jeff. Can I ask you, did the consulate say why the charges were dropped against the PSU players?
And that was kind of the surprising thing. I will admit they didn't say why. They gave no reason as to why those charges were dropped. Now, there can be speculation either way. There can be a bunch of different things as to why charges were not brought forth. One could be that there was not enough police evidence, but the other was that the victim may not have wanted charges pressed in the first place. So what the actual answer is, we just don't know. Natalie?
All right, Jeff, thank you so much. Of course, this story is still developing, and we will stay on it for any updates in between newscasts. Be sure to check KATU.com.